Hey, how you doing? I'm Andrew. I'm an actor in New York, as you know, and thank you for returning for my second breakdown, or rather, Actors React to HBO's The Last of Us. As a side note, I just finished episode 3 and I can't wait to talk about it! It was so cool and so amazing. And it broke up the pacing, which is great. But we're here for episode 2, so let's jump right in. This episode opens in Jakarta, Indonesia, September 24th, 2003. Now, this may seem familiar because episode 1 we saw a broadcast on the radio. We didn't really see it, we heard it. September 26th, you know, this one.
Continued disturbances in Jakarta, but are advising.
So I love this moment in the restaurant where it goes silent because Indonesia was previously run under an authoritarian government, you know, like the one under Suharto. He brought economic growth for nearly 3 decades before his government fell in '98. Well, apparently he did his best to follow constitutional formalities. Many civil liberties were violated during his tenure. Not good, right? People weren't allowed to speak out against the government, which was run almost entirely by military personnel. Sounds familiar. Look, they insulated themselves deeply into every aspect of government and life, winning him landslide victories in many elections. So, seeing these badges enter the restaurant, a lot of people would be concerned, alarmed. You know, they are of a certain age where they would remember this governmental rule. I love this little moment where this guy looks over his shoulder. It just kind of helps build the scene and the environment. Naturally, you'd probably just keep your head down. You don't want to get arrested. But this little moment really builds it for me. Now, Christina Hakim's reaction is fantastic. She sees the hostess pointing her out in the back of the restaurant, and she's a little spooked, right? She does a great job of showing you her emotions without emoting them. Her body language does all the talking. The slow lower of the skewer. She keeps her eyes on the governmental personnel and her hands above the table. She shows you that she's not a threat or a flight risk. And this continues in the next scene, in the car. Here, we see her clutching her purse. She's covering her most vulnerable areas on her body, and she's attempting to keep all the dialogue respectful. Of course, it's written that way, and I guess she could have taken a more aggressive tone, but that's not realistic, right? I mean, okay, I know we're breaking our realistic rules from the previous scene in the restaurant with a guy, but whatever, okay? This isn't realistic, especially given history. Now, all that said, the military personnel are also very respectful throughout this scene. They need something from her, right? So, remember when I spoke about a character's wants and actions last episode? As an actor, we need to figure these things out because it'll lead us to various tactics that we can use to achieve them. Here, both actors need to display an abundance of courtesy because they believe the other holds their life in their hands. Now, this is a small detail, but it's really interesting, right? Christina Hakim, playing Dr. Retna, has to do a little jog in the hallway to catch up. Now, it just tells the story that the military personnel are under some sort of time restraint. They need to get things done, and they need to do it quickly. And she needs to catch up, right? It's just a great little bit of storytelling that you see instead of being told. Now, again, we see the overabundance of caution from Lieutenant General Agus as he tells Dr. Retna to leave the room immediately if she feels sick. Now, this is just another sign, subtle, but it's a sign that shows the audience that they are, you know, still a little unaware about this disease, this fungal infection, you know. They're calling for caution, especially when Dr. Retna is the expert in the room. Now, when she reached into the mouth of the infected, I said, you know, bad idea. Okay, this is bad. Fungus, I don't know. Brain, is this a regular zombie thing? Does a gunshot work? I don't know. I don't think it did because the cordyceps were definitely reaching. That's gross, but so cool. Okay. I love this camera work, right? This slow, zoomed, long shot is gorgeous, right? It's also fairly rare to see a scene with dialogue where one character's back is to camera for almost the entire scene. But then we notice that he's not really the focus of the scene. It's Dr. Retna's realization that there's no longer a way to contain the outbreak. And she does a great job of including this little physical tick. You know, the shaking of her tea. It lets you in on her thought process. It's one of those little moments as an actor where you have to show the underlying emotional impact of news or an environmental factor. For example, I was working on a scene in conservatory that took place on a mountain, and we kept dropping lines about how cold it was, but the director said we didn't look cold. We weren't playing the story. We were imagining our environment, doing everything, but not telling the story properly. We had to take cues from real life. You know, rub our arms, breathe into our hands, rub them together. You know, we had to act like we were cold. That's when we started telling the story, and that's the same moment that she's doing here. Now, there's this little dramatic pause where she's thinking about how best to explain that they can't save lives. That's difficult for her to say, especially as a doctor. Finally, we cut to Yayu's character, and the pain in his eyes is evident as he too grapples with the realization that no one is safe. And he's afraid of her next statement. As a military man, he knows that bombing is on the table. Now, many times as an actor, we have to create scenarios for ourselves to draw on and develop these emotional impact for our audiences. Many call those what-if scenarios. It's where we develop a situation, a scenario, a story in our head that's different from what is being told to the audience so that we have something that we can draw on, because we haven't always experienced what these characters are going through. In the same way, Yayu hasn't experienced what Lieutenant General Agus is doing right now. Unless, I guess, he worked in the government during the pandemic, in which case I really hope bombing wasn't on the table. God, that's dark. I'm sorry. Okay, we'll continue. We'll move on, okay? We open on the present day, right, with an overhead shot of Ellie sleeping in the fetal position in this small patch of grass as a butterfly crosses the screen. That's symbolic, right? I mean, she's the symbol for the future, cradled by nature as it has overcome our concrete jungles, a symbol of perseverance and the continuation of life. Perfect. Now, the first thing Ellie does is take in her environment. She looks around. She's taking it in. Many younger actors, myself included, okay, I'm not going to lie, myself included, I tend to forget to do this. You know, I forget that I'm building a world outside of just building a character and allowing the audience to see me take in these things. It sort of creates this other space that the audience can't necessarily see if it's on stage or behind the camera. It also grounds our crosses on stage, you know? Like if you're going to cross to a teacup or cross to a seat, look at it first. Ground it, then go to it. It's just something that makes it a little less artificial and contrived. Now in this scene we also see an interesting moment from Tessa's character, where she has to say the same line twice. Now she does a great job here, emphasizing different words and syllables, adding intention. Rarely in life do we repeat ourselves in the same patterns. We change it up, we emphasize things to get an answer, to be heard, to get a point across, you know? Now, I'm experiencing that now in Death of a Salesman. Biff has several lines where he has to say it multiple times, and I really hope I can do justice just like she does here. Now, I just want to touch on the lighting in this scene a little bit. Production has put Ellie in the light because she's the hope for humanity, right? It's a common trick used throughout cinema and theater. Now, the inverse then is true too for Tess and Joel, who are in the dark. They represent the dark, pessimistic, nihilistic aspects of humanity, seeing how the world has been shaped by this infection. I guess it makes a lot of sense, right? But then we get this opportunity to see Tess come closer and closer to the light. She crosses over because she's beginning to believe that Ellie can save them. Joel, on the other hand, stays in the dark because he trusts his gut and his history. Now, production is using the lighting to show the audience where characters are at emotionally. It's common, and now that I pointed it out, you'll probably see it all over the place. Let me know, okay? So, I know this isn't about acting again, but I just have to mention another production detail, okay? Joel climbs onto this piece of debris. It's small, it's subtle, but it's one of those things that really helps blend the physical set with the CGI in the back, like a visual trick. Now, I don't have much experience with CGI at this point in my career. Maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, I can have some great CGI performances. So maybe a channel like Corridor Crew will break down the CGI in this episode, if they haven't already. I don't know. I've been really busy, guys. I don't know. Okay, I won't bore you with my busy schedule. We'll get back to this little moment here that I thought was pretty cool, right? Tess tells Ellie that she's got some balls on her, sister. Now, Ellie's reaction is priceless. She's joyful. She gets to feel validated. And it's particularly nice because she's not overly emoting everything. You know, like she's not like, oh, thanks, bro. I'll take that compliment to the garage. I don't know, but whatever I'm saying, right? Like she hides it like many people do out there. We hide our reactions because we want to seem cool. And she's the same way. She wants to seem cool. It fits her character. And then, in Ellie, in this moment, she's kind of capturing all of our, or at least my, fascination regarding the mutations. There's a lightness in her voice as she's asking and clearly excited about seeing this potentially super mutated spore-shooting thing. Probably helps that she doesn't believe it's entirely possible. I mean, she was just told people like to tell stories, right? But you may have caught this tone shift. when she asks about the blinded infected that click, I guess using echolocation to find you. My guess is this shift in tone around the question means she's seen similar infected or heard a lot more stories about them when she was at Fedra school. I don't think the infected that got her was this type. I could be wrong, but she does mention that she didn't hear it coming. Although, she's a kid, she doesn't know better. Maybe she was making a lot of noise, I don't know. Maybe you know because you played the game, but I don't. I'm watching it. Look, Ellie's moment here as she steps away from the water, letting us know that she can't swim, is so recognizable, right? We've all been confronted by things that we can't do. Climbing a mountain, jumping out of a plane, eating that super spicy pepper. Whew. We recoil from these moments, and it's a great recognizable moment for her. I also love her sarcasm and pride after this, though, as she attempts to recover her tough girl image. Did anyone else think they were going to get attacked in this lobby? Because I did. And also, Ellie ringing the bell, having that little exchange with herself, playing out her reservation, reminded me of a video game. Like you get to a new environment, a character runs off, does a little thing, and then it just adds this little ability to acclimate to the new environment and information about her character. We get to see her acting like a kid. And then, finally, we get to talk about somebody other than Ellie. Granted, she's doing great. Pedro, Anna also doing amazing work, but this moment by Pedro as Joel is a fantastic thing, right? He rushes over to Ellie to protect her and helps her up. She's acting like a kid the whole time, right? As I said, and he forgets that she's actually infected until he realizes it, holding her. And what does he do? He looks down. He grounds the moment of his pullback. He grounds it, just like we ground our crosses. He grounds it so that you can fill in the gaps. And then he keeps his hand at the ready, right? He's on guard in case anything happens. It just shows a difference between that unguarded and guarded moment. Really beautiful on his part. Now, is it just me, or does this scene and really this whole episode feel very much like a video game? The pacing kind of feels like a cutscene with exposition dumps, or that section of a game where you just have to walk, pushing your joystick forward, listening to characters talk, and then there's an event. I kept thinking there was going to be some sort of a fight, like zombies were going to jump out, but it very much feels like the early portion of a game where you're still figuring out the mechanics. I don't know. But then we head into another scene that feels like a video game. Honestly, it's really well scripted and acted, though, okay? So it shows Ellie is more comfortable with Tess, obviously, right? I mean, Ellie gets more validation from her. Tess listens to her more, validates her. She's completing and achieving more of her wants with Tess than with Joel, who keeps her at arm's length, refuses to get too deep with personal questions or even humor her, right? Now, you may be saying, but he just complimented her on her knife. Well, yeah, her knife, but what about the ability to toss the knife? That's kind of impressive, right? I mean, both of these characters are filled with pride, competing with each other in a sense, Neither wants to look weak or interested in the other, for very different reasons, right? Joel wants to keep his distance because he's reminded of his daughter, and he can't allow himself to feel hope. And Ellie wants some semblance of independence while being validated. We are reminded of this again, almost immediately. When Joel reluctantly reveals information to Ellie, it really feels like more of our benefit than it is for her. And then we see Tess reveal information, and it's to teach Ellie about the infected, to keep her alive. That's her intention. Now, this whole museum sequence is so cool. Okay, Ellie's interest in and kind of lack of humanity or remorse towards this fresh body. She's obviously more interested in what could have done this. You can hear it in her voice than even checking on the person. And then Tess and Joel immediately getting quiet, looking, listening for signs of infected. And Ellie's reaction to their whispers is she's like, guys, what are you doing? I don't understand. Despite growing up in this world, she's oddly naive, right? Didn't she teach them that? No, I guess not. Whatever. Tess's fear is palpable in this building, right? And the actress does a great job of letting you in on that fear, right? Her breathing gets shallow. Her voice starts to crack. Her eyes are darting around. It's also really nice to have this relief shot previously to see and show that shift. Now, I love the difference between Joel and Tess shushing Ellie. It just fits the nurturing parent versus the protecting parent, the teacher versus the I need to do this for your own good. I don't know, the politician? No. Politicians don't do anything for our own good, right? I don't know. Whatever, not important, okay? Because Pedro Pascal does a great job of selling another moment of, does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? Does this need to be said now? Right? Because in several moments, Ellie pushes her questions or steps on something, making an uncomfortable amount of noise. And as an actor, you can either ignore or not respond to that, which is not great acting because it shows you're not responding or present to your scene partners, or you can respond non-verbally, respond within the character's bound and within the scene. Now, some writers don't include these moments in the script because they expect actors to be good enough to know when and how and where to respond to things. And directors will help guide you in those moments, in those things, to see what they want, what's their vision. Now, always, if you have an idea, ask for an extra pickup, or ask if you're able to do this, if it fits within the director's vision, because you know your character best, right? Now, moving on to another portion of the episode that feels very much like a video game. The entrance route is blocked. You're trapped in a circular room with an enemy. There's obstacles to hide behind, to surprise attack them, or just beat them to death with brute force. Look, I guess as the player you get to decide, or in this case, Joel gets to decide. And I was watching this with my girlfriend and Tess coming back infected. I called that. I did. I called it, okay? You heard it here first, okay? That's a common video game trope. A character disappears during an event and they come back injured, or in this case, infected. I knew it happened. Moving on, right? Because, God, there's so many things to talk about, and for great reason, right? This is bloody brilliant. Okay, I could have done that in British, but I don't have time. This teleprompter is moving so quick. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is Tess revealing she's infected. First, I love this moment where she snaps at Joel. To me, her line about dealing with more infected when it happens is more about dealing with herself than it is about other infected. It has clearly touched a nerve because she knows she's going to die, and it's really heartbreaking. And she needs a commitment from Joel, who just wants to turn around, find another way. And to get a commitment is another action, by the way. She wants him to agree to either kill her when the time comes or finish the job and take Ellie to the Fireflies. Now, I could be wrong, but I think it's the second one. I also love this moment that we get to see her watch him cross the bridge. Now, she really regrets snapping at him in this moment, but she can't bring herself to apologize or tell him the truth. Now, once we get to the courthouse, we can see a shift and an escalation from Tess. Her desperation is more apparent than ever as she searches for a way to get Ellie west, to make the cure, to save her life, until finally it's revealed that she's infected. And Joel recoils again, this time reaching for his gun. Now, Tess shifts tactics, not wants. Joel shifts wants and actions because new information has been revealed. But she wants him to hold up his end of the deal, or to make him do the right thing, and she uses Ellie as evidence to force him west. Ultimately, they're interrupted and forced to move forward, but Tess does achieve her want, just as Joel grabs Ellie and leaves, making a break for it. Now, it's really heartbreaking because they don't get to share a final kiss. He doesn't even say goodbye. And then to add salt to the wound, production just has this really odd, tender moment between an infected kissing Tess. It's weird, but honestly, I guess it makes sense because the fungus is taking Joel's place. She didn't ask for this to happen yet again. Now, it's time for me to start working on episode 3, and I can't wait to talk about it. But hey, don't forget to hit the like.